We'll jump onto the webinar, the actual demo of the product now. Any questions that you have throughout, as I mentioned, feel free to fire those into the Q&A. We can either answer those at the end or Arena will be able to jump in and stop me at any points where those sort of questions are relevant to what I'm showing at that point as well. But yeah, perfect. So this is HandsHQ. Once again, thanks everyone for joining. I appreciate a few of you may have never have heard of HandsHQ before, and this is the first time that you're actually coming across us as a business and the actual software. It may be the first time that you've ever heard that actually software for RAMS and for CPPs actually exists. So to give you a bit of a background on HandsHQ, we've been around now for about 8 or 9 years. Started off as purely just looking at sort of risk assessments and method statements. We're working with very small sort of one man in a van businesses. We realize that they're the ones that have, issues with finding time to write RAMS. Then quite quickly, we realize actually this is an issue for pretty much any company that's generating RAMS documents has the same sort of issues, and it's a scalable issue throughout different industries as well. So we started working with, so many different industries, from construction to events, to facilities management, so many different industries that our system can work for as well. About 1.5 years ago, we added an additional product to the system as well, which is our training register, which is essentially a replacement for your big Excel spreadsheets in your training matrix. I won't be touching upon that today. We will be running a separate webinar over the next couple of weeks on that, maybe next week or the week after. So yeah, if you're interested in that, then feel free to sign up for that one too. But yeah, today we're going to look at the RAMS. So this is HandsHQ that you're seeing here. Moving my screen up and down now. If no one can see that, then please do shout and let us know. But HandsHQ is, quite simply a software to manage and generate your risk assessments and method statements. So it's a cloud-based and a web-based software. So essentially, it means that as long as you've got an internet connection, you can log into the system. Multitude of different devices as well. So desktop, laptop, if you're in the office, or if you're in the move and you've got a tablet, you can sign off and read RAMS on your phone as well. So you've really got that sort of level of flexibility that you may not have at the moment. But when you log into the system, the first page you come to is your projects page. A project is just our terminology for RAMS documents. So you've got all of your different RAMS documents for different projects below here. So we can see our project name, whether it's a live project, anything gray means that project is finished. We do also have yellow tabs too, which essentially mean that's a project that you've created for a future start date. You can have your client reference numbers, client name, when that document was last updated as well. We've got a feature which is our risk register, which you can see here, where you can actually update individual risk assessments. Let's say a slip, trips and falls control measure, for example, needs to be updated. If you've got a project which is currently using an old version of that RAMS risk assessment, then it's going to show up here to say whether it's out of date. There's also an approval workflow. This is more of an internal approval workflow that could be created. So like an approval hierarchy, which we can see here, whether we've got approved documents, documents that are yet to be submitted, or documents that have had that internal rejection and need to be updated and amended. If you are doing a lot of very smaller projects like maintenance works, there is the ability to actually duplicate your RAMS document too. So maybe a job that's similar to something you've done before in the past, you can duplicate that and then obviously change the site-specific details as well. Last thing to show you before we actually go on to the 4-step process of generating a RAMS. For our much larger customers, where you may split your business into different business units, different work types, or even just splitting up your company into different regions, there is the ability up in the top left here to split HandsHQ up into those different divisions. Each division can have their own workflow. You can have a division which creates construction phase plans as well, different content, different users on those, and restrict those users to those divisions as well. So we can really make this customized and work for you as an organization. But let's jump into generating our first project. As I mentioned, it's a 4-step process. So we hit new project up on the right-hand side here, and it brings us through to our first step. This is essentially where we add in our project details. So project name, job reference number, start and end dates using the calendar, client details, and then obviously our locations of work as well. So really straightforward at this point, just adding in the details that we need to for our job. We can then move through to our next step. And this is where we come through to our risk assessment library. Now, essentially, you'll have access to this full library. This library is broken down into a bunch of different tasks across a fair few different sort of industries. So anyone will get access to this when you sign up to HandsHQ. But for our much larger customers, where work is very bespoke, we can actually pull over your own content into the HandsHQ system. So that will allow that library to be very specific to the work that you do. So as a way to show you how this works, essentially what we're asking for is the user to start considering the different tasks that are going to be on site and begin to build that sort of risk profile. So we're in general, if we go down to arrival and departure from site, for example, as our first sort of task or hazard that we've identified, we can select this. You then go into edit. And this is where you're able to see all of the associated risk assessments for that task. So at the moment, what a lot of businesses are doing is they may have their central sort of library hub, which they then have to copy and paste that information over to. It may be that at the moment you go back to an old RAMS where you know that you've got that risk assessment. Once again, you copy and paste that information over. The difficulty and the challenges that come with that is sometimes you are copying and pasting over completely irrelevant information. But what this is doing is it's giving you all of the associated risk assessments for that hazard that we've identified or for that task. And then we can go through and make this content site specific, select and also deselect what we do and what we don't need. So unloading equipment, electric shock from overhead cables. Okay, we've identified there isn't any overhead cables on site, so we can deselect it and it won't show up in our final document. But as we go down below, crush by fall and load. Okay, this has the potential to happen. We can leave it selected. Then we can go into edit. And this is where we can make this information site specific and add our text in here as well. So let's say if it was a 2-ton pallet on Smith Street. So obviously we've got our hazard, 5x5 risk matrix, control measure, and our residual risk as well. But this is really where you're going to see that sort of quality and consistency get so much better, because everyone, regardless of your sort of experience or knowledge of generating RAMs, everyone's going to start from this exact same starting point, and then it's down to them to add in that site-specific detail, which obviously they're the ones that are going to be seeing that firsthand on site if you do get the chance to sort of, pass this on to project managers to generate the RAMs or whoever it may be, engineers out on site. So yeah, we've made the risk assessment site-specific. We can now move back to the library. Essentially, we come out the general category now, and you can see that we come on to our much more sort of job or industry specific, task specific risk assessments. So if we wanted to go into working at height, for example, we've got a whole bunch of different risk assessments for working at height. So let's say we're going to be using ladders, got manual handling sections. Yeah, I appreciate some of this information may not be relevant to you at all, but once again, we can remove any of that information, and we can also onboard all of your content in here that's very bespoke to you. So the years and years that you've been putting into work of creating that library, that's not going to be lost. You can actually integrate that into our system. So let's say we're going to be installing some new lighting as well. So once we've selected our risk assessments, we can then move through to our next step. So this is our second step of the process. This is where we come onto our sequence of operations. So essentially the way that you would like the team to go about completing the job in the safest possible way, and the process that you'd like them to follow. So what's actually happening here is HandsHQ is pulling through automatically different tasks based on our previous selection. So it's not a massive long list that you have to go through to try and find the right information. It's only pulling through what's relevant based on our selections on the last step. So we selected electrical, therefore these are the bunch of different electrical tasks that we have. We're going to be installing lighting, and this is the standard sequence of operations that we want our team engineers to follow. You've got the ability to make this site specific once again, so you can deselect any of the sequence that isn't applicable. You can drag and drop the sequence around. You can actually free text in here as well and add in any of your own site specific details. You can also add any images as well. So going back to that point earlier about the sort of multilingual construction sites or projects, this is actually where you can add images into the sequence of operations and make it more pictorial as well, which has helped out a lot of our customers with those sort of language barriers on site as well. So once we've done this, we can then move through to our next step of our process, which is where we come onto our method statement. So once again, in the same way that the sort of previous steps have worked, a lot of this content is going to be pre-populated for us, and it's going to be pre-populated based on those earlier selections. So once again, the majority of this content is going to be relevant to you, but you can always go in, delete anything that maybe you don't need for this project, or actually add any additional information as well. So you can free text in all of these boxes. You've also got the ability to add any images, which I'll show an example of. I appreciate, at the moment, adding images to Word documents can be a bit of a pain, especially when you've spent so long formatting the document. You drag and drop an image in, your text pretty much blows up and goes all over the place, and you've got to spend another 20, 30 minutes trying to reformat just to get your image size correctly in that document. With this, that's not the way. You will actually be able to upload this image immediately into the system. So you can see here that we've added a map to the closest hospital from Google Maps. We've just screenshot that and pulled that into the system. You can add any captions as well. You can change the size of the image too if you needed to. But as we go down through the method statement, once again, if any of this content isn't needed for you, then, for example, if your client doesn't need to see your legislation, completely get rid of it, and none of this, the heading won't show up as the boxes are empty. You've got hazard substances, so you can create COSHH assessments within the system too, which I'll show you in a moment. And then finally, you've got your PPE requirements here. So what we've actually done is we have our 5 points of PPE selected and pre-populated each time. So they're always going to be selected every time we go through this process as well. So then hit next, and believe it or not, that is us done. We've now created our site-specific RAMS document. At any point, you can go back into a document and actually update it with more relevant information as and when maybe the project changes or the requirements, the environment changes, your client chucks another task in. You can always jump back into that risk assessment like so. And you can actually add a brand new risk, let's say working in noisy environments, for example. We can add this, go to save and exit. The system is then actually going to ask you for a reason for editing. So we can just say added risk assessment, go through to our next step. And then what's really handy is you've got this activity tab where you can see a full audit trail of that document over time, how it's changing, who's updating it. You've got full date and timestamps to that. So great for the sort of best practice and document management, and obviously for sort of ISO purposes as well. It's great to be able to track this information here. What you can also do too is you've got the ability to download your documents based on the sort of historical document. So as and when changes are made, you can still go back to that previous document. So really handy if there was ever an incident, near miss on site. Insurers do love this because you're able to show pre-incident RAMS and then post-incident RAMS as well. So show how you've mitigated the risk for future projects. Let's show you how we add a COSHH. So we've got a COSHH library here. Simply add COSHH. Our COSHH library has got around about 10,500-ish substances. It's always growing, so there's probably more in there now. But essentially, all you need to do if a substance isn't in here is send us the SDS sheet. We can then upload that to the system. So all you need to do is search for the substance that you're going to be using. Let's go with Fireferm for our mastic. We can add COSHH. It's then going to essentially ask you a few questions and boxes to fill in to create that use-specific COSHH assessment. So what is the quantity that's kept on site? Drop-down menu for method of use, who's at risk, sort of location, frequency of exposure, and you can add any additional control measures in here as well. So we can now add that COSHH assessment, which is now being added to our document. We can move back to our project, and we can now see that our mastic has been added. You can add as many COSHH as you need onto the back of your document as well. So just before I show you the actual final document, I'm going to take you through. So once we've generated that RAMS document, we can go ahead and forward this on to, well, first of all, we'd want to run through the approval process, that internal approval sort of hierarchy that I mentioned earlier. So we've got here, submit for approval. Let's say if it's an engineer that's generating the RAMS for you, once they've completed that job, they can then come into the system and decide, right, I need to send this to me. So I need to send this to Mason, for example, to actually sign off on this document. So they can submit for approval. What's then going to happen if I'm the health and safety director? I would then receive an email to say that Joe Bloggs has created Say's House Electrical Phase 1 RAMS for you to approve. I can then come into the system, preview the RAMS document, and then just say, yes, best RAMS ever, hopefully. And then we can approve that document. And now we know, our engineer essentially gets notified on the system to say, okay, this has now been approved. It's ready to, first of all, be sent off to the client, but then actually be sent out to all of the teams as well to sign off on that document. So let's run you through that process. Let's start off with sending it to the client. So you've got the button up here, which is email. And you've actually got the ability to send this to your clients directly from HandsHQ. So you've got your email address. Obviously, that's what you've used to log in. So it looks as if it's come from yourself. Decide who you want to send it to. Add your subject line, your body of your message as well. And then our RAMS document would just be attached to that email too. Sort of works a little bit like WhatsApp. So in that activity feed, you can see that it's been sent, and you can also see when it's been opened as well. So you'll get a couple of colorful ticks once it's been opened too. So you've always got that audit trail of it being created and sent out to clients as well. Let's now jump on to the sign-off process. I appreciate that. Yeah, fair few of you probably just have a very sort of standard process for sign-off, and that may just be a blank piece of paper out on site and for individuals to sign off on that. I know that does come with its own challenges. Often, if HSE or whoever's come on site and say, can you show me your RAMS? That'll be a frantic sort of look through. You might have a board up, or you might have to go into the site office to try and find those documents. Equally, those signs, pieces of paper, unfortunately, do go missing, and there is always that risk that they do disappear or get stuffed at the back of a glove box sometimes. But with this, what you're able to do is we can actually send this directly out to those engineers and to those personnel that are actually out on site. So what we can do is, let's say if this needs to be sent to Alan, we can select Alan. That you'll essentially have a library in the background of all of your personnel that work for you. So we've added Alan. We can see that he's electrical engineer. Training status is coming back as green and valid for project. That is essentially the integration with our training matrix that we have within the system, which I'll briefly touch upon in a moment. And at the moment, the signature has not been sent. So we can actually ask everyone to sign the latest version. A copy of this RAMS document will then be sent out to Alan via email. So they'll be able to open up the RAMS document on their phone or on their computer. And then if they do that, they can open it up and read through the RAMS, accept it, turn their phone to the side, and they can sign off. Alternatively, if you wanted to log into the system and find your name, you can do that and then come down to sign now. It would then bring you through to the final document, which we can see being pulled through for us now. So obviously we've got all of our sort of job details in here. This is a cover page, so you do have the ability to add in a cover page if you needed to. You have your own logos, business information, revision number will update itself automatically each time. Start off with our job details and client information, and then we go into our sort of sequence operations, our methodology, and our main bulk of the method statement as well. So all of this information is formatted for us. Our images get pulled through as well. So one thing I like to say to a lot of our customers is you'd never have to worry about formatting a document ever again. And that genuinely is where a lot of the time is sort of wasted with sort of Word documents and manually having to format information. So as we come off the back of the method statement, come to our risk assessment, 5x5 grid gets explained for us. And then we come on to our risk assessments, which are laid out real quite nicely, easy to read. They flow real quite nicely as well. I've had the pleasure of reading hundreds, if not probably thousands of different risk assessments from different businesses that have been sent over to me to sort of review and see how we can help make those better with our system. One thing that I've seen in common with a lot of them is just how much text is thrown onto one page. And to be honest, if it's the first ever day that you're on site and you pick up that piece of paper, you wouldn't have a clue where to start. But with these, it's really quite easy to sort of read and understand the flow of the documents. If we shoot off the back of the risk assessments, we come onto our signature page. So in a minute, I'm going to digitally sign this, and then that signature will then be in print on the document here. And then as we go below, you can see that our COSHH assessment gets bolted onto the back as well. You can decide whether you want the SDS sheet on the document or not. It's completely up to you. So once Alan, in this example, has read through the document, happy to get to work, he can then select accept. That's then going to pull us through to this next page. So what we have here is the ability actually to take an image of the person that's signing that document. Hopefully the pictures are going to be a little bit nicer than that one. That's horrific. But they can just sign off like so. And essentially that's us making sure that we're getting the right people signing the right documents, rather than, you know, one person turning up late to site and signing off for their mate who's running a little bit late as well. So if there was ever an incident, an investigation, you can always go back to this project and you can go and find this information as well. So we can see that we've got the signature there, that individual has read and understood the RAMS document. So yeah, from here, you've got the ability, obviously, to preview the RAMS document at any point you need to. You can jump back in and edit that project. You can also download it as a PDF if you wanted your own version stored on your system as well. Any questions at all, Irina, that have come through
yes.
at all?
Yes, Mason, there have been a couple of questions about the pricing, if you could cover that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. So we have, in terms of pricing, we have a bunch of different packages. Packages will differ in price depending on number of projects, features, different access level, different user numbers. They can go from, our packages can go from £30 a month to £10,000 to £1,000 a year. So it really does depend what you would need, but more than happy to reach out to everyone that wants to know about pricing today and give you an idea of what that would be. So maybe if you just whack in the chat, yes, please, or me, just put your hands up and I can make sure I give you a call first and give you an idea on what that pricing looks like. But yeah, as I mentioned, the more bespoke the system needs to be, the more expensive and the more you'd move up in those different packages. But it does depend on different feature levels that you'd need as well.
Right. Also, there was a question about the industries and the content we support for. So I have popped up a link in the chat, but essentially we cover a really wide range of industries with our content library, including construction, electrical, scaffolding, a lot of others. So yeah, be sure to check out that link in the description as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Rena. I've just seen another question that's come through from Paul. Does your system offer full package, including inductions, permits to work, etc.? Unfortunately not. So our system, what HandsHQ covers for the moment is RAMS, CPPs. So just to let everyone know, the CPP process is pretty much exactly the same as the RAMS, but obviously it's going to ask you some more CDM related questions. That is a 4-step process. And obviously the method statement sections have been modeled on the HSE sort of example CPP as well. I'm sure we'll do a webinar on the CPP side of the system soon as well. So yeah, RAMS, CPP, COSHH, and obviously the training matrix as well. That's what we cover. So a few of our customers, most of our customers do their permits to work the same process that they've been following before, but they may actually upload those to the RAMS. So on the section here where it's documents, you can actually upload a PDF, so you can bolt on information towards the back of the document as well. So whether that's, that might be certificates, it might be insurances, you can add those and bolt those onto the back of your document as well. Any other questions at all, just before I jump onto the last few final bits? Feel free to, throw some last final questions in for us, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions that may, Irina, unless you've covered everything. But yeah, feel free to fire some of those last questions in. The other thing what I wanted to show you is the risk register. So this should give everyone a decent idea of obviously what's already involved in the different categories that we have within the system. So you can see, everyone will get access to all of this content. And within here is all of the different risk assessments that we have. So this is the risk register. This is on sort of one of our sort of more sort of higher packages. What you've actually got the ability to do here is set renew dates for each individual risk assessment. So you can have a proactive approach to updating, reviewing individual risk assessments as well. Each risk assessment will have their own activity log and sort of audit trail throughout the life cycle of that project as well, of that sort of individual risk assessment. Stuart, great question. Where do you add personnel? well, let's have a look at that now. So we've got this section up here, which is personnel. There's two different versions. There's one which would just be a personnel library, which would quite simply just be a long list, a library of all of your different personnel. So when you add someone to the system once, they'll always be saved in the sort of background for you to pull through their information. The training register, which is essentially a replacement for the training matrix, is a bolt-on product. So it is an additional product. And essentially what this does is you upload an individual into the system. It will send you automatic reminders and emails as and when training is due to expire. But what you can also do here is hold an individual and all of their training and certificates as well into the system. So if we ever wanted to pull off any CSCS cards or images, any certificates, first aid at work, whatever it would be, these will pull through here. So what's actually really handy with this is this integrates directly into the RAMS process. So when we've created a risk assessment and method statement and we add that personnel onto our document, what you've then got the ability to do is download a training report. And essentially, so we can see here, and we've got a training report. So what that would do is all of those individuals and all of those personnel that go into that site, a training report can then be downloaded. And essentially, if your clients ever ask you, you know, Alan's coming to site today, can you prove that they've got the correct training for that, for the job at hand, for the task? You could be one step ahead of them rather than having to run around the office trying to scan copies of certificates into the system. You can just download a whole training report and all of their information's there ready to be sent off with the RAMS as well. We've got, if anyone is obviously interested in the training register, then feel free to let us know here. We do also have, I think the link's just been popped in the chat as well. Feel free to have a look on our website around that too. We do also have an integration with an e-learning provider, which is HandsHQ. So you can actually distribute e-learning courses direct from the training register. And then once that course is taken, expiry dates and certificates will be uploaded automatically as well. So feel free to join the sort of updates on that. It's coming very soon, hopefully within the next month or so, pre-Christmas. But yeah, if anyone's interested in that, feel free to let us know. I'm more than happy to reach out on that as well. But I think we've got some time for some last few questions. Will the training register flag when qualifications are approaching expiry? Yes. So 60 days before, you'll actually receive an email to say that the training is due to expire, and then timely reminders throughout. You do also get weekly, Monday morning, I think, weekly email reminders that get sent out to you with a bit of a report of whose training is up for renewal as and when. So always keep you one step ahead of the game as well. Any final questions at all? Feel free to pop this through. I know there's a couple of outstanding questions in terms of prices, so we can reach out to you today. Either myself or my colleague can reach out and give you an idea on price. And then more than happy to look through the different packages. If you wanted another demo, then we can always do a sort of one-to-one demo where we go through the system and make it a little bit more bespoke to you as a business, and figure out exactly how it would customize and how it would work for you as an organization. But yeah, any final questions, feel free to fire those in. There's a couple of links that have just been added into the chat now for the training register. Feel free to sign up for that. Otherwise, thanks for joining, everyone. I'll let you get back to your busy day. Appreciate you've run over by a couple of minutes, so I do apologize. And yeah, feel free to sign up for the next webinar. Feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions around RAMS as well, and more than happy to pick up the conversation and yeah, see where we go. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Arena, as well, for your help. And we'll see everyone soon.